Welcome to our presentation on developing efficient and effective quality control programs. My name is Jason Smith and I'll be your guide through this course. Today we'll discuss how to identify, organize, manage, and monitor quality control issues for a major construction project. I'll begin by being very blunt. In our industry today, QC programs often consist of standard 3 to 4 inch thick binders full of boilerplate language. Often, the only thing a project team does at the onset of a project is fill in the blanks with the project type, name, and location. These thick binders full of hundreds of never-read pages are then placed on a shelf in the project manager's office and not touched again until the end of the project, when the binder is summarily stuffed into a file box and shipped off to archives. In this course, we'll discuss how to quickly and easily develop a quality control program that is easy to use. In this presentation, you'll be provided with the tools to develop a QC program that makes your job easier and your projects run smoother. We'll dispel the standard practice of QC programs that are cumbersome, inefficient, and, in all reality, never implemented simply because they're inefficient. The QC program presented in this course focuses on project-specific issues. The heart of a quality control program. In this first part, we'll begin by briefly discussing the goals of a QC program, and then move through some basic QC spreadsheets and discuss how to compile a comprehensive QC program. We'll begin by defining what quality means to a construction project. This definition is actually much broader than you may think. Quality is not just associated with the finished product. Although how the final building looks and performs is important, that is not the sole definition of quality on a construction project. Quality is also associated with how a project is managed and the project team's experience throughout the construction process. A quality project means the owner, architect, subconsultants, subcontractors, material suppliers, and everyone else involved with the project have good and profitable jobs, and in the end, enjoy the construction experience. Quality is a process, not just an end result. Let's briefly go over a few of the fundamentals of a quality control program. A QC program will help achieve a proper balance of the following three attributes. Optimize quality, naturally. Minimize time. We don't always correlate schedule with quality control, but the schedule is in fact a crucial component of project quality. And minimize cost. Now these are the three fundamental principles of project management as a whole, and we've all heard these terms in different ways and slogans, such as shown graphically as the three corners of a pyramid, or with the term better, faster, cheaper. Many believe you can't improve all three of these aspects at the same time. For instance, many believe that if you improve quality, the project will cost more and probably take longer. They also think that if you shorten the schedule, the project will cost more and quality will suffer. Lastly, these people believe that reducing cost will also reduce quality and potentially prolong the schedule. Although there is some truth to this school of thought, I don't subscribe to it and I hope you don't either. We can reduce cost, reduce schedule, and increase quality on our projects with good management. A good QC program is the cornerstone to improving all three of these important aspects simultaneously. I want to quickly point out two things that lay the foundation for a QC program. Now these may both sound very self-explanatory, but nevertheless I feel it important to quickly point them out at the beginning of this course. First, spreadsheets will be used almost exclusively. A QC program will pull together all of the loose ends and track items that could be easily overlooked. The primary purpose of a QC program is to prevent things from being overlooked or falling through the cracks. Now these are two of the primary principles of an efficient and effective QC program. It sounds simple, and it really is. Okay, now let's get moving into the nuts and bolts of the presentation. Here's an example of how I put together the main spreadsheet for a quality control program. Now I'll get into more detail later, but let me just point out a few quick things here. First, you'll notice that this spreadsheet not only tracks all of the issues, but it also correlates the issues with the respective subcontractor. This log also categorizes the issues by phase, level, and area. So, let me give you an example of this. If we have an electrical foreman working during the rough-in phase at level 1 in the northwest quadrant, we can sort the list and print out an abbreviated summary of the items that he needs to keep an eye out for during the course of his work in the near term. Now my spreadsheet is quite simple, and you may have additional columns that you want to add to yours. And that's great. I want you to develop your own personalized QC program that you are personally most comfortable with. However, I do want to give you some advice in this regard. So let's go over a few things here. Adding additional columns can be helpful, but don't add so much information that the program becomes unmanageable. Remember, we're trying to save management time, and this is a management tool to support our efforts. It's not our primary focus, and we don't want to spend too much time having to update this thing every day or have so many columns and complicated relationships that it's hard to read. Adding the responsible person's name, phone number, preferably their cell phone, and their email address can be very handy. Tracking things like submittal status can be helpful, but not always. Remember, we already have a submittal log, so it's not typically found to be efficient to add 6 or 8 additional columns to track submittals on the QC list. That would just require a duplicated effort, which contradicts good time management practices, and good time management is what we're trying to accomplish here. Next, we'll discuss what should and should not be itemized and tracked in a QC program. Here we're talking about the items themselves, not the columns as we've discussed in the last 2 slides. Obscure odds and ends should be included. This is really a staple of the quality control program. Anything that is easily overlooked needs to be in the QC program. Keeping track of the obscure project odds and ends to ensure nothing falls through the cracks is what a QC program is for. We might have a requirement that switch plate covers be stainless steel in lieu of plastic in a certain room, or that a non-slip coating be applied to the rungs of the roof access ladder. These are just a couple random examples of things that could be easily overlooked during construction. This list doesn't just need to be items from the contract documents. We might have a reminder at the onset of a project that the pedestrian barricade lighting needs to be on a timer in lieu of a switch. This helps save energy, and it makes sure that we don't have to try to remember to turn it on every evening or off every morning. Now, these are just a few obscure random examples. Any given project could have hundreds or even thousands of items like this. Construction errors should be included. This is another staple of the quality control program. Toward the end of a project, if the QC program has been run effectively, the title may simply change from Quality Control Program to Project Punch List. A good QC program is rightfully considered to be synonymous with a rolling punch list program or a zero punch list program. Embeds might be included. Tracking embeds in their own separate log is highly encouraged, but if you so choose, embeds can be tracked in the QC spreadsheet as well. The truly important things are that you're keeping close tabs on all embeds and that you're doing so in an efficient manner. Now, you've heard me use the word efficient many times already in this course, and you'll hear me use it a lot more before we're through. Efficiency is key not only to quality control programs, but to project management as a whole. Like embeds, you're encouraged to track backing on its own separate log, but also like embeds, backing can be tracked in the QC spreadsheet as well. Once again, the important thing is that you're keeping close tabs on all the backing, and that you're doing so in an efficient manner. Obscure trade coordination issues should be included. In the spreadsheet, we saw an example of where the miscellaneous metals and electrical subcontractors needed to coordinate on site for a conduit being run through a steel post. That's a good example of an obscure trade coordination issue and something that could easily be overlooked during construction. Obvious trade coordination issues should not be included. We don't want to duplicate information that is clearly covered by the project schedule or otherwise clear and obvious. That makes the QC log unnecessarily large and cumbersome and turns updating of the QC log into an administrative nightmare. Punch list items should be included. An up-to-date QC list is for all intents and purposes a punch list. In fact, as I mentioned a moment ago, a good quality control program is sometimes referred to as a rolling punch list or zero punch list program. A rolling punch list is a punch list that is instituted early on a project and used to track deficiencies on an ongoing basis so that problems are resolved as the project progresses, not just left for repair at the end. A zero punch list is really the same thing as a rolling punch list. The distinguishing characteristic is simply the clearly stated goal of having 0 remaining items at project completion. MEP commissioning items should not be included. Clearly, there are a ton of obscure and easy-to-miss items associated with MEP commissioning, but that's why we track them on their own list. Like submittal and RFI items, the MEP commissioning program will have its own log and will be handled separately. Don't bog down the QC program with these items because it needlessly duplicates the efforts. Closeout documents, extra stock materials, and other end-of-the-project activities should not typically be included. Once again, there are a lot of obscure and easy-to-miss items associated with closing out a project. O&M manuals, owner training sessions, obtaining the myriad of extra stock materials, collecting all the as-built, collecting all the warranties, etc. But these items should be tracked on their own special project closeout log. Although some actually track these with the submittal log, which is fine. The important thing is just to be sure that they're tracked in an efficient manner. Of course, you could track these items with the QC program, and if you choose to do so, I suggest that you track them with the designation of closeout in the phase column of the log. That way you can quickly sort these items to the bottom of the list, because you'll want to keep these items sorted down and out of the way until near the end of the project. Construction restrictions should be included. These are issues that may be prohibited by the design documents. For example, the structural engineer may prohibit placing conduits in the structural concrete, or the structural engineer might prohibit placing materials and equipment in excess of, say, 5,000 pounds on any elevated deck. These are things we need to keep an eye out for and be cognizant of during construction. Obvious construction items should not be included. We don't want to recreate the project schedule on the QC program. We don't want a checklist of complete framing level 1 area A, complete gypboard level 1 area A, complete taping level 1 area A. These things are already competently covered in the project schedule. Elements that are difficult to construct should be included. Having items that will require a high level of craftsmanship on the list reminds us to keep a close eye on them during construction. Change order issues that could impact the project schedule should be included. Change order logs have a lot of columns and a lot of dates. Because there aren't many change order requests for which the pricing might delay the project, we don't commonly use the change order log itself for this schedule-critical tracking purpose. Experience has shown that we rarely have more than 3 or 4 change order issues that fall into the potential delay category, although your change order log may list hundreds of issues. For this reason, it's a good practice to track potential show-stopping change order issues in the QC log. Make your own judgment on this. The change order issues I've personally found helpful to track in the QC log have both of the following attributes. First, they are items where we need pricing from the subs to be approved by the owner before the owner will authorize the work to proceed. And secondly, we need the work or material procurement to begin in less than 4 weeks. Again, make your own decisions and your own guidelines on this, but I did want to share my own personal preferences with you as an example. Naturally, change order issues that will not have an impact to the project schedule should not be included in the QC log. Critical submittals might be included. This would fall into a similar category as the critical change order issues. Make your own judgment call. If you think your submittal log is sufficient for this tracking purpose, just use the submittal log. Each person will have their own personal preferences, and each person's preferences may vary among different projects or upon specific project situations. And obviously, non-critical submittals should not be included. The primary reason I wanted to discuss change order and submittal items with you is to bring them to the forefront and just get you to think about them. All I want to do is get you to think about them, and from there I have confidence that you'll make a good decision as to whether to just leave these items on the change order and submittal logs, whether to add some of the items to the quality control program, or whether to highlight these issues in the hot list that we discussed in part 2 of this series. Next, we'll talk about where to find quality control issues to populate the QC log. First, the drawings. Now, this sounds obvious, but it's really not the no-brainer that it appears to be. I want to point out that we're not going to find obscure and easy-to-miss items by flipping quickly through the drawings. Obscure and easy-to-miss items are just that. They're obscure and easy to miss. So if all we're doing is flipping through the drawings, we're going to miss them. We've got to read the drawings, front to back. Reading the drawings may not be fun. Those things can get boring, but we've got to do it. Only by performing a complete and thorough review of the drawings will we be able to compile an accurate, complete, efficient, and effective QC program. Next, the specifications. Now, if you thought reading the drawings front to back was boring, wait till you get to the specs. Again, skimming them is not sufficient. We've got to read them. While reading the specifications, we come across a ton of obscure and easy-to-miss items that need to be added to the QC list. The prime contract agreement. Particularly the supplemental conditions. This is where a great deal of project-specific instructions will be found. You'll find project-specific protocols in there, especially when you're working within a partially occupied building. Supplemental contract documents, like the soils report. I think you can see where I'm going with this. We've got to read all the project documents. An example of something you might find in the soils report is that trenches need to be sloped back at a 1:2 ratio rather than the more common 1-to-1. This is a safety concern. We often need a longer slope when we have loose, sandy soils. Subcontractor bid qualifications. Subcontractors thoroughly review the drawings and specs prior to bidding. Things that they find special or out of the ordinary often have a cost impact of some nature. Further, the subs are very likely to address it in their bid qualifications. Go through those bid proposals and take advantage of the work all those various bidders have already done. And don't just review the proposals of the winning bidders. Review the higher bid proposals as well. Honestly, the reason those other proposals are higher might very well be because those other bidders found more obscure and easy-to-miss items than the low bidder did. It could be that including money for those items is what made their bids higher in the first place and cost them the job. The submittals, especially the manufacturer's details. Keep the QC program in mind when you're reviewing your submittals. We find a lot of special things in there, especially with regard to trade coordination. Once again, this means we need to thoroughly review all submittals. Now, I know submittals are often just rubber stamped on their way through a GC's office, but we all know that they shouldn't be. We've got to read those things. We learn a lot of important things about the project and avoid a lot of problems in the field when we thoroughly review submittals. The bid instructions. Odds and ends that are discovered by the GC estimators will be kept track of in their bid instructions. Now, they do this to provide clear notifications to the bidders for bidding purposes, but it is also by nature a great resource when compiling a QC program. Let's talk about the guys who have careers in quality control, the inspectors. All the various project inspectors are great allies in the quality control effort. Inspectors complement our QC efforts, they don't replace our efforts. For instance, just because the owner hires a third-party waterproofing consultant to monitor construction and inspect all of the waterproofing work does not mean that the GC doesn't need to perform their own QC efforts with regard to waterproofing work. Just a few of the inspectors who we should partner with include the following. The City Building Inspector. Now, people don't usually think of city building inspectors as quality control assets. In fact, they're often thought of as pains in the neck. But the truth is, these guys are great partners in the QC effort. The Third-Party Special Inspector. This is in reference to the third-party inspector hired by the owner as a permit requirement to monitor, inspect, and test the structural aspects of the project. The Waterproofing Inspector. Many owners employ a waterproofing consultant primarily to add another set of experienced eyes to the building envelope design and construction. The third-party MEP commissioning agents. The commissioning agents I'm talking about here are hired by the owner, once again as another experienced set of eyes reviewing and inspecting the design, installation, startup, testing, and balancing of all the MEP systems. And as I mentioned before, these guys keep their own massive spreadsheet to track this work. Let's talk about the parties who benefit the most from the QC program. There are 5 parties who are primarily responsible for all the odds and ends on a project that no other trade wants to provide, aka the project leftovers. Subcontractors bid the scopes of work that they want to do on a job, and they exclude the things that they don't want. However, one way or another, every part, piece, nook, and cranny of a project needs to be built by somebody. Let's walk through these 5 parties, because there's a great deal of work performed by these guys that needs to be incorporated into the QC program. The Miscellaneous Metals Subcontractor. These guys pick up all the steel that no one else wants to do. The Structural Steel Sub will do all the primary steel, basically all the big and easy stuff. The Precast Subcontractor will take care of their own steel connections, as long as they have supports within a few inches of the back of their panels. The Casework Subcontractor might or might not pick up their own wall-mounted support brackets, and I could go on and on. The Miscellaneous Metal Subcontractor does whatever steel is left on the project after the other subcontractors have picked and choose what they do or do not want to provide. And that ends up being a real hodgepodge of work. For this reason, Miscellaneous Metal Subcontractors keep a very, very detailed spreadsheet of their work. For each item, their spreadsheets may list the budgeted hours, sequence of fabrication, projected installation date, about 10 columns tracking the design and submittal process, and much more. These logs are usually so detailed that you need to print them on 11 by 17 paper, and even then the type is very small. My point here is to ask them for copies of those spreadsheets on a regular basis. They update their spreadsheets frequently, so ask for a courtesy copy about once a month or so. This keeps the GC and the Miss Metal Sub working collaboratively together, which is great. On my projects, I keep a copy of this log hanging on a clipboard next to my desk and refer to it regularly. The Flashing Subcontractor. Glass and metal panel subs do their own flashings. Roofing subs will do some of their own flashings, particularly with single-ply roofing systems where the roof jacks and other selective flashings are actually supplied by the roofing manufacturer. Plaster subcontractors provide reglets at the bottom of their system, but they don't furnish head flashings. Mechanical subs will flash their own roof penetrations, but many other subs won't flash their own roof penetrations. For built-up asphaltic roofs, MEP subs will provide their own roof jacks, but steel subs will not provide roof jacks. Precast and GFRC subs will never provide their own flashing. Now, this may all sound convoluted and confusing, and you're right, that's the point I was trying to get across. In the end, whatever flashing someone else doesn't want, the flashing sub will need to provide. The above-grade waterproofing subcontractor. These guys almost always do the horizontal applications, such as a membrane below a topping slab at a plaza deck or waterproof surfacing on a balcony deck. However, the vertical applications are where these guys end up with a myriad of diverse work. Metal panel and glass subcontractors typically pick up their own secondary membranes, even the higher quality membranes such as self-adhered sheet membranes. The metal panel and glass subs in particular are actually pretty good about doing their entire systems and not pawning anything off on the other subcontractors. But these two subs are a rarity. A masonry sub will provide building paper behind a masonry facade, but if a self-adhered sheet membrane or other higher quality membrane is required, they will not provide it. The painter will actually provide water repellents, which may be spray or roll applied to a masonry or concrete surface. Roll applied damp proofing, regardless of what system it's behind, is always done by the above-grade waterproofing sub. As you can see, once again, the above-grade waterproofing subcontractor will end up with a real hodgepodge of work. The caulking subcontractor. Metal panel and glass subcontractors are good about doing their own caulking and sealants, but on the other hand, masonry and precast subs typically exclude caulking and sealants altogether. And finally, the general contractor. In the end, whatever the subs don't do, the general contractor has to take care of. The formwork subcontractor might construct the guardrails around a project, but once they've demobilized, the general contractor is going to have to maintain them. Cleanup, helping the special inspectors, site logistics, etc. all falls into the general contractor's responsibilities. The GC is ultimately responsible for providing a complete project, and they are the default party for whatever the subcontractors aren't responsible for. There will be a lot of items on the QC log in this regard. Like the Miss Metal sub keeps a detailed spreadsheet tracking their hodgepodge of work, the general contractor can use the QC log to track their own collection of work. Okay, now that we've got the background and a good idea of what a QC program needs to entail, let's talk about how to compile a QC program by looking at an example. Let's begin this segment by expanding on the QC spreadsheet that I showed you earlier in the course. This is a spectacular tool. Not only does it track any and all quality control issues, if you so choose, you can also track the embeds, backing, and other deliverables here as well. This list may have items added to it or closed from it on a daily basis, and keeping it updated is a great management tool and saves a great deal of time. This log may have 1,000 items on it, and that's why I personally prefer to have a responsible person column. Each subcontractor may have 4 or 5 different people listed in this column, so it's great to be able to pull up this file while you have someone on the phone, do a quick sort by their name, and run through the important upcoming items you're relying on them for. The drawing reference is a staple on these lists. This saves a tremendous amount of time through the course of a project hunting and searching through the drawings and specs. The phase, level, and quadrant columns all work together as I described earlier, but I'd like to point this out again. We can sort for each subcontractor in each level, quadrant, and phase of construction, and then print a summarized list and hand it to the foreman in the field. Although I haven't sorted the completed items to the bottom of the list, you will want to sort those to the bottom of your QC program. But don't delete them. You don't want to lose the records of your QC items. Just sort them to the bottom of the list and get them out of the way. Note that sometimes you'll need to list the same item multiple times in order to ensure your sorting will be accurate. This is a coordination issue affecting both the electrical sub and Miss Metal sub. The reason this has been split into 2 line items is that it will show up when we sort by subcontractor. If we sort for the electrical subcontractor, it'll show up in their list. If we sort for the Miss Metal subcontractor, it'll show up in their list as well. The way I have this spreadsheet set up, you really need to list it twice in order for this to happen, but that really isn't a big deal. Now let's talk about implementing the QC program and managing the subcontractors. It's a general contractor's job to pull all the subs together, manage them, and coordinate them. We need to actively manage the subcontractors. We can't just give them piles of logs and other data and expect them to figure it out all on their own and follow through. As leaders, we need to lay out the plan for each subcontractor and work side by side with them. We can't just distribute paper. We need to follow up and follow through. So let's talk about how to go about doing that. Teach the subcontractors how the QC program works, what they can expect from you, and what you expect from them. It's best to meet with each individual subcontractor's PM and superintendent for the sole reason of discussing the QC program. Give them copies of the entire QC program and go over the portions that directly relate to their work. Go through every item that applies to them. Walk through the details because that stresses the importance. Don't just hand each subcontractor a big stack of paper because chances are a large percentage of them will not read it. An additional benefit here is that by going through each and every item, you're going to impress the subcontractor with your knowledge of their work and let them know that you've done your homework and understand the complexities of the project. And that goes a long way in getting the subcontractors to respect you as a leader. Emphasize with the subcontractors how the QC program will make their jobs easier and help prevent costly mistakes. With this program, we're catching potential mistakes the subcontractor may make in the field, which is going to save them money, and they're going to appreciate that. This will get their attention and help attain their buy-in for the QC program, because we need the subcontractors to be fully on board with this program and look forward to using it throughout the project. Really focus on how the log can be sorted by trade. That's going to be the subcontractor's favorite part of this program. That's going to save them time and save them money. Those lists sorted by phase, level, and area are going to help get the subcontractors excited about this program. Encourage them to provide additional items. Draw from the subcontractor's experience. They know more about their scopes of work than anyone else. This gets them involved in the process, and that's important. We want them involved. This should be a team effort. The QC program is not one-sided. We need to be humble and ask subs for their opinion. Don't rely on the subcontractor project managers to communicate QC issues to the foreman. Develop a working relationship with them yourself. Eliminate the middlemen and go right to the source. Get to know the foreman on site and be sure that they get to know you. Be welcoming and make sure that they know they can come talk to you anytime. Your door should always be open. Provide the sorted individual trade coordination list to each foreman on at least a weekly basis. Don't just send it to the PM at their office, and don't just hand it to the foreman. Quickly go over the list with the foreman and emphasize the most important items. Ask him if he's got any questions, and if he does, make sure you get the answers to him immediately. Let the foreman know what submittals, change order requests, or other information you're waiting on from their office. Subcontractor PMs and foremen are a team. Go ahead and tell them both everything. Now I want to share some experience with you. If a subcontractor has a strong foreman and a weak project manager, you can help use the foreman to push the project manager. And vice versa, if a subcontractor has a strong project manager and a weak foreman in the field, you can use the project manager to help push the foreman. And again, I can't stress this enough. Routinely ask the sub-foreman and project managers what they need from you and follow up promptly. Lead by example. If you don't respond promptly, they won't either. It's a two-way street. We work with subcontractors and are teammates with them. We're not dictators. The terms leadership by example and servant leadership apply very well here. Be sure what you give the foreman is quick and efficient. Don't paper them to death. The reality is that foremen only have so much time for these lists because they do have to spend their time running the crews. Use that time as efficiently and as effectively as you can. Avoid giving them a long list of stuff they already know. Keep it simple, straightforward, and efficient. Projects are best managed with kind words spoken from intelligence, not harsh words spoken from ignorance. We've all seen those superintendents, project managers, and even upper executives that yell and scream a lot. If you have to yell in order to get people to listen, it means what you're saying is ineffective. Good managers know what they're doing and how to lead. Good managers get people to listen based on their intelligence and leadership abilities, so they don't have to yell. If you have to yell, scream, and belittle others to prove you're in charge, the reality is you're not in charge. By implementing a good QC program and utilizing the project management tools discussed in Part 2 of this series, you will be a good leader who gets people to follow him based on knowledge and intelligence. Well, that wraps up our course. I hope the lessons learned here are of benefit to you throughout the course of your career. Thank you.